Here's a little product that you've probably heard a fair bit about. This is the R36S to be precise, and it is described as a game console. Now it has the 4 buttons on the back, it has the nice 3.5-inch screen, but it also has a few more unusual things, like its history. You may have heard of the R35, where they actually completely copied another device, and then they decided to completely copy this device as their second outing. But regardless of that, the main standout feature is probably the price. Now this retails here in the UK at around about £33 if you're buying it from somewhere like AliExpress, which is absolute peanuts. It doesn't have a Wi-Fi inside of it, but you can, as you can see, add a little Wi-Fi dongle that you can find for £5 on Amazon, and that makes things like scraping the artwork for your ROMs much easier. Now this runs on the RKOS system, which by default was on a very old version, but you can easily update that. But I did find that for whatever reason, the update failed a few times. Now I would suggest, if you can, doing it the old-fashioned way to a computer and updating it using the inbuilt SD cards. Now the micro SD cards here, you've got one for the operating system and you've got one for your actual ROMs. You can put both onto a single card, and as you know by now with these devices, you should always change out the card that's in there because they really are that bad. Now this device is actually quite impressive. It can run all the way up to PSP, although I have a few things to say about that. If you're looking for a system to run 2D games like Game Boy games, Game Boy Color, then this is absolutely fantastic. Not only is the 3.5-inch screen remarkably clear and bright, it has this curved glass look to it. I think they call it 2.5D, don't quote me on that. But it doesn't come with a glass screen protector like many of the other models, so on here at the moment I have a piece of plastic, which does irk me a little. Now on the one hand, the emulation is of a good quality. On the other hand, there are a few things with the hardware which you might need to think about. Now the screen is absolutely fine. The speaker, it's not the best in the world, as you'll hear in a second, but it's functional enough. The D-pad is just okay. Now as you'll know maybe, that it actually has a couple of joins inside. One of them's disconnected and one of them isn't. You should cut that join and it makes things a little bit nicer. The same goes for the buttons. They are okay. Not the best, not the worst, and you can improve those with a little modification by just unscrewing one of the screws on the back of the device. It's very simple. There's another channel, I'll pop a link in the description. You can go check out how to do that. Now, aside from that, the front buttons, the analog sticks are very much like a Nintendo Switch. They do have click, they feel okay, but their low profile means that if you're used to something like a Steam Deck or a console controller, they will feel a little restrictive. And the same can be said for the back of the device. Now on the back of the device we have 4 buttons, L and L2, R and R2, but they are quite possibly the clickiest buttons of all time. They have slightly thought about the design here. You'll notice that the internal buttons are ever so slightly raised. They're actually a little bit higher than the exterior, so that your fingers can sit a little more comfortable. There's also a ridge on the back of the device that you can rest another finger underneath. There's some thought here, not a huge amount. Now there are 6 screws in total. If you want to take this apart, it is very easy indeed. And there's also a removable cover so that you can actually replace the battery, which I think should be on every device. It's really simple to do. There's a simple plug that you pull out and that's job done. Now the quality of the batteries themselves doesn't seem to be tip-top. I have noticed on my other model, the battery does seem to have slightly swollen, which is something that can happen on all lithium batteries, but it's also something that can lead to fires, so just the quality control, perhaps not the best. Now with these emulators, you can set the screen to reflect your chosen Game Boy style. You can have it as a much more high contrast white image, or you can use the more retro green. I just can't bring myself to use anything but the retro. You know what I mean? I just think I prefer it. Now on the subject of the RKOS, if you want to get back to the main menu, you just press start and select together. You have to do that twice sometimes, but that will take you right back. If you want to get into the menu within your ROMs, well, the Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, you'll have to press start and X together. There is a full list on the wiki of RKOS that will give you all of those, so again, I'll pop a link to that in the description so that you can go check that out. Now, the scraper that I mentioned that scrapes the artwork will also scrape a little bit of information about each of your games. That will just scroll over on the screen, and depending on the theme that you've got, that will appear in a different place. If you want to favorite a particular game, you will need to go into it, over to the game, and then favorite that. Now your engines are also listed in this way, and I do like this low-key blue clean look. There are several different ones that you can access from the options menu, but I think we should look at some of the emulation on the other devices, as it's not nearly as good as we've just seen. Now a good example of this is with the N64. If you want to play this, well, you're going to have to do a few things. Firstly, from the main menu, you're going to go in and change the actual ROM settings. You're going to want to change the emulator settings on this one, because the default emulator core just doesn't work very well with the R36S. Now this is with the updated core. As you can see, it's playable. The frame rate's not terrible when you're looking in certain areas, like not at the enemy or not anywhere where there's large open spaces. It's okay. The frame rate does dip down quite considerably every time you look, well, anywhere else. As you know, the control scheme of this game was an interesting one, and by default on the R36S the controls are shocking. You've got both the aim and the shoot on the left hand side of the device, so make sure you change that before you go trying to demo it for a new channel. As you can see, if I can line up the headshot, I won't actually be able to pull the trigger because I need to get my finger around and press the other button, but we'll try. There we go. Now, as far as N64 goes, that's potentially one of the worst performing games. Some of the others are actually much more playable. Now in the N64 emulator settings, Standalone Rice is the best one, really. You can try a few others, but for me it's been the one that has worked the best. It is worth playing around though, especially if you get a game that performs as badly as the last one, to see if things improve at all. Yeah, so it's not perfect, and that's putting it nicely, but it's not the worst. It could certainly be worse than that. It really depends on the game as to the performance that you're going to get. It's definitely a different story on the 2D systems. Everything is absolutely flawless. I've been working my way through classic cannon fodder, and yeah, it's just so perfect. Even using not having a mouse and keyboard, obviously you would never have had a mouse and keyboard, but I was always an Amiga player for this title. It really does run and play like I remember. Although I managed to glitch this stage out, and I can't blow the door off this building, so I'm going to have to restart in a second. You can probably hear just how loud this device can get as well, and bear in mind that I don't actually have this set to the full brightness. This is actually 50% brightness just because it's more than bright enough. If I head into the options, I can turn that all the way up. Now I wouldn't say that was 50% more bright, but it's certainly brighter than it was, and it's a very nice screen. Every other platform works brilliantly. Now the PlayStation is particularly good on this device. If that's a system that you loved, and let's be honest, it had some of the best RPGs if you're an RPG fan, and it also has some amazing action, adventure games, and pretty much everything in between, then this is a great device for PlayStation emulation. Bushido Blade was one of my all-time favorites back in the day. I'm probably not quite as good as I remember being, but it's worth giving a go and seeing how it performs on this device. If you've not played Bushido Blade, this isn't Tekken. It is life or death with a single hit, so yeah, it runs well on this platform. The same experience carries over to all the RPGs. This device is almost perfect for the PlayStation setup. Can feel a little restrictive if you have larger hands, but even so, the pocketability makes up for that in my opinion. Now, we do still have a couple of speaker grills on the bottom of the device, as well as the DC input for power and the OTG port, which we just used for our Wi-Fi connection, as well as the headphones. Now, as for the chipset, well, you can see all the information on the screen, the overall power and performance. And as I say, for the price they're asking, it really isn't a lot. And I do think this is a worthy device. The issue here really is if you want to support the copying of other devices on the market. They're literally taking, even down to the board, repackaging it and selling it for cheaper than the person who originally came up with that design. I will leave you to decide that. But for me, if you're after an initial retro handheld, then this is really a solid choice. If you're looking for a premium feeling device, then you really do have to pay for that. But if you just want a handheld that's very cheap, has a nice 2.5D screen, comes with 15,000 games, as this one does if you go for the 64GB card option, battery life is so-so. There are definitely devices that will last longer than this. But if, like me, you just want to play some of your favorite games from your childhood, no matter how bad they were, well, this really is a fantastic way to do just that. If you've enjoyed the content in any way on this new channel, then please do stick around. Let me know in the comments and I'll be sure to reply to you as well. And yeah, don't forget to hit continue.